Colton McDannald, Jimmy Renallo, thank you both so much for coming on to the show today. You guys are actually the sole inspiration for me starting this podcast. I remember over a year ago now, I joined Donkey Brain, the podcast, for an episode. That was so freaking awesome. And we'll explain more about that, but just thank you so much for coming on and for inspiring me to begin with.
Yeah, props to you for taking what we did and running with it. Like, we're in a studio. We're like, this is so much more than we ever did. I mean, we were just doing it for fun and it was super casual, but it's like hilarious to be like, okay, this is, if we really put our minds to it, what it would be. But it's been awesome to see what you've been doing and kind of everybody you've had on. And it's, we talked a little bit before we got on, but awesome just to see kind of the local community coming together and seeing who's listening, who wants to be on, who's sponsoring, just kind of the big picture, what you've made out of it, just, from being on a podcast one time, being like, oh, I think I want to do that. Like, let's see what it entails. So
you are
awesome.
The man. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, just seeing all your stuff all around town, it's crazy. It's unreal. Like, you've taken what we've done at such a base level, and you've just blown through the top of the roof. It's not even close. So good job, man. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. I am blushing a little bit. Let's go ahead and crack these beers. But before we do that, actually, I just want to say this is what you guys do at the start of each one of your episodes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you do that? Whose idea was that?
So pretty much like big picture on our podcast. So our podcast, we just started for fun. Like, obviously, like we said, you took this and you ran with it. Where for us, I was working one day and somebody was saying they had just started a podcast. And I was like, I wonder if I should start one. And she was like, if you started one, I'd listen to it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what does that entail? Like, what is appealing to you? Because I was curious. I was like, are you my friend? Or are you just, you're a big podcaster? I was like, will other people listen to it? Because I was like, obviously it's, not exciting to be like, I run a podcast and one girl listens to it because she wanted me to start it. And we were deciding between the names. So we went with Donkey Brain, but I think the other name we were between was we were going to call it A Few Beers, because it was just going to be us just drinking a few beers, just talking about it. And I think when we started the first episode, it was almost like, cheers, here we are. Like, we're doing it. And we kind of cracked, and it was hilarious because, like, after the first few episodes, our friends are like, dude, you're not adjusting the audio at all. Like, you're talking and we're listening, and then you crack the beer like half an inch from the mic. We're like thrown off by it. So it was just kind of hilarious. And then it just kind of turned into like a staple. Like, it stuck. And then it was kind of hilarious because we had started in February of 2020. So we were recording in person for a little bit. Then obviously COVID happened. So we had a bunch of friends kind of, have to go home. Friends were all over the country, and they were like, yeah, I'd love to be on your podcast. And it just kind of became a staple. Like, friends would text me like Matt Breen, when he was out in New York, he was like, yeah, man, I can be on your podcast, but I got to go get beer first. Like, I don't want to be the guy that doesn't have a beer to crack at the beginning. And people were just like, yeah, no, I'll grab a beer. Like, even before we start, it's like, you got a beer? And everyone, yeah, right here. Like, it's just like funny to see, like, people are like, oh yeah, this is just how they open. Like, no one's ever really been like, that's kind of stupid. Why do you do it? People are just like, it's just what they do. And they just like leave it at that. So it's been funny.
Like, even before we ask, like, okay, do you have any question about the show? The first question is always, do you have a beer to start the show? Because if you don't, we're gonna have to wait for you, and it's gonna be super awkward. So, very first things we ask.
Well, okay, I want to talk more about that because I think that's genius, really. But first, let's go ahead and crack these. I'll do it by the mic.
Just go bust out your drum. Nice.
Sick. This is a first for the show.
I'm kind of nervous pouring on camera. What if this is bad?
Yeah. Oh, dang it. I poured it horribly. Shoot, it's all foam.
You're going to have a bad...
Oh, man.
You guys. Connor, get them on there. I'm an idiot.
We're like brewmasters right now.
Yeah, dude, I was like super nervous about that too. I was like, dude, what if like I'm sitting here talking for the next 10 minutes with just a can of foam? People are like, you claim to do this every week? And it's like, kind of like.
And I want to give a shout out to White Oak. They're a local brewing company. Really great place. Just went there for the first time the other week. Brilliant beer. Emancipation Brewing Company in Fairbury. Hit me up and you can be the next one we do. Let me finish.
No, that actually is really good.
Holla at ya.
That's like one of my big regrets too. Like when I was down here for college, like I definitely did not take advantage of like all the local breweries, stuff like that. So it's cool to see, this place has been around in town and just like never tried them. Like,
do what you can what you do. That's brilliant. That's very smart.
As two guys who have degrees in marketing, good job.
Stamp of approval.
You did good.
Yep.
Okay, so tell me a little more about your podcast. Where did the name Donkey Brained come from? Because that's an interesting name. What does it entail? What did you want the podcast to be about and cover? Tell me all about that.
So Donkey Brain comes from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's
Charlie Kelly.
Yeah, Charlie Kelly. And then
so one of the
what's the
characters.
grandpa's name? Not grandpa, but what's the dad's name?
It's Frank.
Frank. I keep forgetting his name.
Yeah. So pretty much.
He has a certification from the state of Pennsylvania saying he's not donkey brained. It's like an actual thing. I don't know what it is. The show makes fun of it all the time. But like that'd be a really funny thing which to add to the podcast. Donkey Brain the podcast.
Yeah. And like if you were to look up like the Urban Dictionary definition, it's like, my brain was like absolute mush. I was donkey brained. And when we were thinking about like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Like we're two average college kids who are going to be drinking beer,
Emphasis on average.
Just talking. Like what is, and then we were kind of like that. All right, that fits. Like it's one of those things like we'll just roll with that. And it was one of those things where like, it is interesting because like a few beers, people are like, oh yeah, whatever. Like there's no question to it. But like people are like, donkey brain, like what is that? And it's like almost intriguing because they're like, yeah, I don't know what that is. Like, yeah, I'll listen, like just to check it out almost.
And I feel like if you would have named it something like Two Beers and whatever, just it would get lost. Like people would have a hard time finding it because there's probably a million podcasts with beer in it, but Donkey Brain, that sticks out.
Yeah.
People remember that immediately.
Yeah.
But the reason I think it's so smart that you guys have beer every episode and you guys crack it at the beginning is beer is a social lubricant. And so it really promotes good dialogue, I think. Like, I'm excited. I want to see if this has any effect on me. And I'm pretty lightweight, I would say. This is weird. I've never talked like this in front of the camera. But, like, I think it promotes great dialogue, opens people up, gets the words flowing a little better. So for a podcast, I think it's genius.
Well, and it was kind of interesting, too, because, like, especially when we were recording in person still, like, if we ever wanted to have a guest or anything on, it was almost like a selling point to be like, hey, man, if you want to come, we'll buy the beer, we'll just hang out, we'll talk, are you in? And people, oh, yeah, sure. Like, it's the same thing with, like, if anybody offers me, like, beer or food, I'm like, I don't have to pay for it? Yeah, I'm there. Like, you got me. Like, so it was kind of interesting with that where it's like you can get people in, but it is... it just takes a casual where it's like if we walk in and it's like, whoa, this is kind of intimidating. If it's like, oh, you want a beer? You want to take it easy? Like, oh, yeah. Like it just instantly kind of relaxes you where it's like you don't think about it, but people are just like, oh, yeah. Like, okay. Sure. This is easy. Like,
So you two didn't come from the same hometown, did you?
No.
Nope.
How did you meet and how did you come together to create Donkey Brained?
So it's really funny. We actually met in geology class.
Yeah. So I see the sticker.
Yeah, I've been looking at the whole entire time. So we met in geology class, like total just a random thing. We were actually lab partners. So that's how we initially met, and then we ended up working together at Young America Realty. I saw him come in. I'm
that's
like,
kind of how we came to know you too. It was like through Corbin, like you were living with him.
Oh, that's right.
So
that's
it was like it was funny because it was one of those things. Like we were, I think that was like our sophomore year. We were lab partners, and then I don't think I started working there till second semester my junior year. And like, a lot of things like that. It's like, yeah, dude, we just show up, we do our work, and we don't need to hang out. So we
was
lost
Paul
touch.
Meister. Paul Meister was your
Paul
professor.
Meister.
Awesome. Shout out to Paul. I just saw him the other day, actually.
Really?
He's
awesome.
He's the man, dude.
He's a great dude. But yeah, it was like kind of funny because like we were in the class together, didn't really talk much outside of class. And then when I had started working, he was already working there. And then it was like, hey man, didn't I know you? Like, weren't we? And he's like, yeah, we were lab partners. I was like, oh, cool. And then it just turned into like, you're going out with coworkers, you're hanging out more. Like, we just kind of started seeing each other more. And then from there, it was like, yeah, we're hanging out all the time. Like, yeah, let's do a podcast. Like, let's just go for it. So funny how everything like came together just because, there were a lot of variables, moving parts and stuff like that. But,
So you were both, what are your majors actually? What were your majors at ISU?
marketing and sales.
Yeah. It was the
both
same.
of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
We had a lot
so-
of classes together, not only geology and then obviously Young America, but
Yeah.
we'd have classes together all the time during senior year.
It was kind of weird because it was like we almost had like one class and we worked together for a little bit, and that was like our junior year. And then like senior year, we were in like 2 or 3 classes each semester, like sat next to each other, like hanging out all the time. So it was like, we didn't talk much because we just had like one random gen ed class that we got randomly paired. And then all of a sudden it was like, we're in groups together, we're doing presentations together. So was cool to like stay in touch, especially with like, all right, we have a podcast, we work together. It's not just, this guy's in my class. I see him every Tuesday, Thursday or whatever. So
whose idea, between the two of you, primarily, whose idea was it to start this? And do you remember when it was first brought up? Like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And what were the first steps? So I'll start with whose idea was it, and how did you bring it up to the other? We are brought to you by Kelly Gerber, a trusted real estate agent in Central Illinois. Do you need a trusted real estate professional to assist you in navigating through the buying or selling process? If you do, remember one name, Kelly Gerber. Kelly is a phenomenal real estate agent for Keeley Real Estate in Fairbury, Illinois. If you're selling, she has premier marketing strategies implemented to assure that your home is circulated to buyers throughout Illinois. And if you're buying, she has professional relationships with lenders, title companies, inspectors, and attorneys to alleviate the stress that comes with buying a home. Whether buying or selling, Kelly works hard to ensure that the real estate process is enjoyable and stress-free. It's a seller's market, so the time to call is now. Call Kelly up at 217-390-8205 or send her an email at kelly@keeleyrealestate.com to begin your real estate journey today. Member of Mid-Illinois Realtors Association, Illinois Board of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors. We are brought to you by Forrest Edge Tree Service, who's been supporting this show for a long time and supporting the Livingston County area for even longer. If you guys have trees or tree stumps on your property that you want gone, go nowhere else but Livingston County's premier tree service provider, Forrest Edge Tree Service. Your yard is no place for looming, dead, or damaged trees because it's just a matter of time before they come down, ruining your property, ruining your week, and ruining your bank account. This is exactly why you need to be a responsible adult and hire the services of Forrest Edge Tree Service. Simply give Joe Rudin a call or a text at 815-615-3037 to get a free quote today. Keep your family, pets, vehicles, and neighbors safe, and save yourself from a world of headaches when you call or text Forrest Edge Tree Service to get those dangerous, looming, troublesome trees off of your property. That's Forrest Edge Tree Service, Livingston County's premier tree service provider.
Was it Sam Zaganta? The one
Yeah, so it was...
Oh, wasn't your...
No, it was neither of our ideas. So it was actually one of the other girls that we had worked with, like I was saying. So she was like 3 episodes into a podcast kind of talking about it because I was curious because I was like, I have like a media background and I'm like, okay, like how hard is it? Because I was like, she was a sales major too. And I was like, when you're jumping in and you don't know, obviously it's intimidating. You're like, I don't know how to do audio work. I don't know where to post it. I don't know anything like that. And she's like, no, it's actually a lot easier than you would think. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we kind of got to talking, and it was literally like, I remember it was a Saturday. I was working, he wasn't. And that's when we were talking about that. And then she's like, yeah, if you did one, I'd listen to it. And a few of our other coworkers were like, oh, if you and Colton did it together. And I was like, dude, forget work today. Like I was on my computer, we were texting back and forth, like, what do we call it? I was trying to make logos. Like we were doing all this stuff. So it was like, that was kind of the first step. And then realistically after that, we were like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Because obviously that's the biggest thing. It's like, we could sit here for 4 hours, but if we don't talk about anything exciting, people aren't going to listen. So we're like, okay, we need the engaging aspect of it to get people to listen. Like, if we're just talking, people are like, yeah, if you're not funny or if you're not educating us, we don't care. So we were trying to figure out a lot of those steps. And, you would kind of come up with the idea of, I guess, what are weekly topics, but like a rough draft of just like what we're going to talk about every week. And that was
the roughest of drafts too. The roughest of drafts. Like our topics are literally, what are people talking about? What are people not talking about? The only thing that has any sort of creativity is like Ask of the Week, because Donkey Brain, the podcast, Ask of the Week. That makes a little sense. But like other than that, it's what are people talking about? What are people not talking about? And then just muddled stuff all the way through there, just random stuff.
But I think to some extent too, like that played in a lot of getting people's willingness to be on it, because we said like, hey, we're not just going to talk, but we're also not going to drill you with questions or anything like that. It's like, here are 2 topics, and pretty much how it broke down was, it was like, pop culture, current events, whatever it is. It's like, what are people talking about currently, and then what are people not talking about that you think they should be, whether it's like obscure things, like we were talking about, like I threw out like the Bermuda Triangle one week. I was like, yeah, people don't talk about that. Like, why is that? Like, it's like such a thing where you're like, oh, dude, I don't want to go down there. My plane's gonna go. Like, you're so concerned about it, and then it drops off. But then some of the other things might be like, like our claim to fame as a podcast is like we claim that we broke a lot of the COVID news because we started in February. We're like, dude, people are not talking about like this coronavirus. Like,
really?
If you go back and listen to the first episodes of Donkey Brain the podcast, we're hammering coronavirus early February.
Yeah,
we said like the first 2 or 3 podcasts we're talking about it.
But that's like the thing where it's like, okay, people aren't talking about, it could be a news article, it could be whatever. And at the time, it was like we were reading and we're like, dude, this is obviously a big thing. Like people are talking about, there's articles, it exists, but it's not like you're walking into a college class and they're like, oh yeah, we're talking about, we're presenting on it or we're actually talking about. So for us, we're like, yeah, it seems like a pretty big thing that people are not shining light on at all. So that was nice because that was like our 2 big topics. So it was really easy to host people as well as like kind of where we were. We're like, dude, we're college students. We can't dedicate 30 hours a week. So a lot of it was, hey, if we're recording Monday night, I'll read the news from Sunday or Monday and just pick out what I think is, good, bad, maybe trends, like, sports, whatever it might be. But it was really easy to create that content. And then a lot of people were funny because they were like, yeah, we just think your spins on things are hilarious. So I was like, okay, so you're listening for humor, but also, people aren't talking about it. Like, yeah, I might not know about this. So it's almost like intriguing to be like, oh, what are they going to talk about? Like, is it funny, stupid, just out there things? Like,
yeah. And you can humorously cover current events also, which is kind of an interesting way to go about receiving your news.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
Satire.
Yes, yeah. You ever seen what's the Saturday Night Live thing?
The Weekend Update.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I haven't watched it in a while. Maybe they don't even really go over current events in depth at all. It's probably not informative. Yeah. But there's that other guy on Comedy Central. He used to have that news show. I forget his name.
Well, it was Jon Stewart on The Daily Show.
Exactly.
It's Trevor Noah now. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Have you ever had anyone decline coming on?
We've had people that were nervous coming on before. Like, if you ask them again to come on, they're like, I feel like I bombed. Like Matt Clary, he felt like he bombed the one time he came on. He did totally fine.
Yeah.
But people just think like...
Just hypercritical of themselves?
Yeah. There's a weird thing of like listening back to yourself. Like I guarantee I'll listen to this and think, man, I sound stupid. But no, like listening back on it, it can kind of give you a weird thing like, oh, I did not do very well. But no, hypercritical is definitely the word that I would use for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like a lot of it was like, we never had anybody who was like, oh no, I can't be on that. Or like, this is going to be horrible for my image or whatever. Like a lot of people were just like, oh, I was on it once. Like, I don't know if I can hold myself even to that bar. And we're like, dude, this is like a casual thing we do for fun. Like it's one of those things like, just have your talking points. And a lot of it too was like, we would ask people to be on. And then they would be like, oh, I don't think I did good. And we're like, well, have you ever listened to an episode? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, that probably would have helped. Like, just to get an idea of like the template and just like what we're looking for and kind of what the style of the show is. But yeah, I don't think we've ever had anybody like flat out be like, no, I can't. Like, I don't want to or whatever. Because a lot of it was, friends or people who listen to the show. So it was like kind of funny because like, we were not, the podcast that millions of people were listening to by any means. But it was funny because like, we'd have somebody on and then they would talk about the person who was on the week before because it was like, oh yeah, that was so funny that they brought it up, or it was kind of like a cool tighter knit community. But yeah, nobody really was like, yeah, this is totally going to be like, like detrimental to my professional growth or whatever.
That's an interesting topic I want to ask about because the reason that I do this podcast full time, I really do not want to work for any large governing body that could fire me for some of my beliefs, some of the things I say. Because I'm hugely pro freedom of speech. Like, even if someone passionately disagrees with me and just annoys the crap out of me, I think that it's important that they be able to say that. And to me, it kind of hurts me to hear people say, like, that they can't say certain things or feel that they can't say certain things for fear of losing their professional credit. I don't know exactly what to call it, but do you guys ever fear that on the show? Like, do you think that, man, if I say something wrong, I could get fired from my, what do you guys do actually besides the podcast? Because unlike me, you guys have big boy jobs. You guys do actual
so I
stuff.
own my own company, so I'm never worried about that.
JR Media, plug it real quick.
JR3 Media. So it's just a multimedia, like photo video company. So I'm definitely like, I'm my own boss, so I'm not worried at all about that.
Good
But
for
you're
you,
kind of
man.
in a different,
I'm in a
you're in a little bit different of a boat
so-
with what you do. Yeah.
What I'm currently doing, I'm actually going back and trying to get my teaching degree. So I just actually had a certification test the other day, like one of the 3. So I'm trying for that. So that's something I kind of have to watch out for. We actually haven't had an episode here for the last couple of months because I've been doing football practice after school and it gets home really late. And I mean, there's
You
just not
coach
a lot of time.
also?
I do. I coach football.
Where at?
Auburn High School, my old high school. So.
Oh, Evan Patterson.
Evan
That's right. I
Patterson,
forgot
yeah.
about that.
Yep,
That
absolutely.
Kyler kid went there too.
Yeah,
right?
Kyler Clark. Yep.
That's right. That's right.
The kid.
Is that what you call him, or is that just because I call him that?
No. It's just a.
Sorry,
funny name.
Kyler. He might watch this actually.
He
so.
might. He very well could.
So you're gonna be a teacher. That's actually rougher territory when it comes to personal opinions.
Every once in a yeah. So now that that's kind of getting full swing and everything, once we start getting back on our grind doing the episodes, I probably should watch what I say a little bit more. Probably
that-
clean it up.
Does that suck at all for you? I'm kind of putting you in rough waters, perhaps, but
No, I mean not really. I mean I just gotta be
as a
smarter.
whole, I would say like we.
It's not that we really say anything bad. it's
Yeah,
just
like it's
maybe a
very
little bit
much like,
crass language.
hey, if you want to come on, we're not the PG. Like, if you want to let it fly. But like to some extent, it's not like, we're very strong one political belief, or we're
Right.
we're gonna talk racism, or like things like where it's just kind of like this. For us, was very much like a hey, let's get together, let's record our thoughts and have fun with it. It's not like we're really swinging for the fences, like laying everything out, where it was just like, we're just talking about, this athlete did something stupid, or like, it's very much like we are not bringing you anything per se that is like,
Opinion
wow,
based,
that's
like,
super controversial. It's just like, someone did this, we're talking about it. Like there's which is good too, just because I'm like, it's so hard to be like, if you put yourself in a niche, it's like, okay, you only can stay in that niche almost if like your following exists there, where it's like, hey man, we're just talking to anybody, anybody. Like I have a lot of our friends listen to it. I've had a few people where like their aunt or their parents love it. Like it's kind of like, we just keep it vague in general, and then from there it's not like, we're so like weirdly specific to something that people are like, it's just, I'm disinterested before I even listen. It's, we keep it fun and light, and there's a few times where it's like, we're going to talk about this topic or do this, but we're not like, hey, we're talking about Democratic Party every
We're not
week.
dying
It's
on
like,
any hills.
Yeah.
Like we're like we'll say things that are probably not appropriate. That's the worst it gets. It's never like some crazy take that's like, dude, what's wrong with you sort of thing. It's just like drop an F-bomb here or there. That's pretty much the worst thing.
We've never recorded an episode and then just immediately been like, the public
Can't hear
cannot, like, this is going to get us in deep waters or stuff like that. It's like,
never
so,
been
but I mean, like, that's kind of like the spirit of the show too, is like, we're like, let's keep it light. Let's keep it fun. Like, it's almost like, an entertaining listen, where it's like our episodes are anywhere from like 35 to like 45 minutes, where it's like, you might be driving to work, you might be going on a bike ride, you might be like, you don't want to listen to these like crazy engaging. It's like, if I can just listen to it and laugh, that might be what I'm looking for that kind of time slot or whatever. Whereas like, as soon as you start getting too specific, or your beliefs are one certain way, it's like
we're shooting for too many audiences.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not hitting our target audience.
And it's
it's not a conservative podcast. It's not a political conservative podcast, even more narrow. It's just like shooting the breeze for entertainment purposes.
Exactly.
That's exactly.
We are brought to you by Fairview Haven Retirement Community in Fairbury, Illinois. Fairview Haven is an apostolic Christian community where choice is valued, growth is encouraged, and life abounds. Their team strives by the grace of God to provide the highest quality of life to all those that they serve without regard to race, color, religion, or their ability to pay. Fairview has created a haven that supports the spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional needs of all who call it home. Here they seek to embrace life and honor the dignity of all of their residents and their right to make choices for themselves in a safe and nurturing environment. This unprecedented level of care extends also to their staff, who are loved, cared for, and appreciated beyond measure. If you want to be a light in our world, if you think you have the skills to provide great care for others, and if you want to have an immense and positive impact on the lives of many of our most beloved community members, then consider joining the team at Fairview Haven in Fairbury, Illinois. Loving as Jesus loves, Fairview Haven. we are brought to you by Tri-County Carpet and Flooring Sales and Installation in Fairbury, Illinois. Tri-County Carpet and Flooring in Fairbury is the premier flooring store throughout Livingston, McLean, and Ford counties. From choosing the perfect flooring to measuring and installation, Tri-County ensures top quality products and services. Their trained professionals boast precise measurements, straight cuts, and perfect fits, while their showroom houses a multitude of gorgeous, top-quality, name-brand carpet and flooring options in the latest styles and colors that are durable and long-lasting. With free estimates, design consultation, and contractor and multi-room discounts, Tri-County in Fairbury is your one-stop shop for all of your home and business flooring needs. Pay them a visit at 19 Jan Lane in Fairbury, Illinois, right off of Route 24, and give them a call at 815-692-3666.
Tri-County Carpet, your flooring paradise.
I'm comparing what you're saying and kind of applying it to my own podcast, where I don't want to have a narrow idea, I don't know what to call it, a narrow range of subjects that I wish to discuss and cover and types of guests that I want to have on. I want to keep that broad, but I always want to keep it educational, maybe inspiring as well. But gosh darn it, I've had some pushback. I've had some people say, like, how could you, you're talking to this guy about that, and then when one person's complaining to me about having this guest on, and for not saying something or maybe saying something, I'm having another guest saying, great job having this person on, I love it. Do you guys think it's important to have a wide range of guests on? And this is kind of like off topic from what your podcast covers, but do you think it's important to hear a wide range of ideas and opinions on current events, on different subjects? Do you think that's important, or do you, I don't know, do you think there's a problem maybe in society where people are too narrow-minded and they only get their information from echo chambers that fit their own narrative and things like that?
People definitely do get like that. I mean, like people will accost you just for listening to somebody now. So I don't know what I don't know what causes that, like why we have this sort of disdain for just listening to people and hearing what they have to say, but that's definitely an issue. And we listen to everybody. We talk about so many random things on our show, and you do as well. I don't know what people's hesitation is just to hear people out or just have them on a show. I don't understand.
Yeah. Like a lot of it, like it's interesting because it's like you almost want to be vague enough that you can appeal enough people that you're not, all of a sudden the niche, like, okay, well, I have 200 listeners, but they love it. Cause like, obviously that's not the goal. That's not how monetization works. That's not like, you're not going to be successful in the long run doing that. But at the same time, it's like, if you're positioning yourself in a way that's like, hey, this is an educational podcast. It's like, I'm putting it out there as an educational piece. You don't need to listen to it. You don't need to believe what you're hearing, but I'm offering this to you as just like a, hey, like, it's almost like in the school system, like if you're going through like history class and it's like, okay, I might be Christian, but I'm also learning about other religions, but I'm not like boycotting, like, well, why are we teaching that? Because it's like, no, you should know it exists. You should know background. You don't have to take it and run with it, but it's out there where it's one of those things, like, it's kind of like, some people might be like, oh, I can't believe you do that. But it's like, okay, but my show, if my goal is to educate people on things, that's what I'm doing. Like, you didn't have to take 2 hours out of your day and listen to it if it's not appealing. Like, there's a reason there's a title and a bio and stuff like that. It's like, you don't really blindside people and just post something where it's like, yeah, check out this episode. And then they listen and they're like, what the heck? I didn't want to listen to this. But it's like, if that's what you're doing, it's like, yeah, that you shouldn't all of a sudden be like, well, I don't want to educate people anymore. It's like, well, no, if that's how you got into it and that's your goal, it's like, yeah, if you don't want to be educated, you don't have to listen. But that's not my goal. You can't please everybody, which is annoying. But at the same time, it's like, what's that happy medium of like, okay, maybe if I am going a little bit, too serious on one topic or headed one direction, it's like, okay, maybe I'll stay, in that center line more or less. But, there's no reason it's like, oh, one person didn't like this, I'll never do it again. It's like, well, that's stupid. That's one person. Like, how many other people benefited? And you kind of have to fall of, what the majority wants, where it's like, you're always going to have those outliers where it's like, oh, I hated this. It's like, okay, but, if 600 other people liked it, I can't really go with what you want, but, you just figure out that happy medium and ideally sit there, but yeah, it's impossible to please everybody, unfortunately. So
Yeah, all information. I feel like I love taking in information, even if I think it's just completely out there. It's bullcrap even. It's like I have a filter in my brain, so I'm not at risk of, oops, I accidentally believe this now. Like you can run it through a filter. And in school, I teach about other religions, and I'm a devout Catholic, for Pete's sake. I'm not diehard conservative. I like to think that I have a balance of liberal and conservative values. Yeah. But I think it's important to hear the other side of arguments with open ears and an intelligent brain to process the information that you're taking in. So you're not just, some people are so open-minded that their brains fall out, is what I like to say. Yeah. So it's like, people that don't even have any idea what they believe, they can hear some bull crap. They can hear some guy that confidently preaches baloney, and then they believe it, Yeah. So it's like you have to learn all sorts of information and ways of believing and ways of thinking. And then you just have to make sure you have the filter in place to assess all that information and figure out what you believe and stuff.
Well, that's the biggest thing. It's like, you're putting it out there as like, here, take this. Like, it's like there's so much education out there, whether it be articles, news, whatever, there's just so much info in general because everything we have, we can, pull out our phones, look up whatever we want. But it's like, I'm putting it out there. You don't need to take it and, change your whole life, steer your own action differently. But it's like, I'm trying to educate people across the board because I pitch myself as, an educational podcast. And it's kind of like, it's an interesting dance because it is, you kind of want to stay in the middle, or you can have your own beliefs, but it's like, if you can be in the middle and it's like, hey, I'm just trying to educate people on whatever topic across the board. Like, I'm going to be unopinionated. I'm just putting it out there for you. It's like, okay, that's a lot different than, I only teach about one thing. And then everybody on the opposite end is like, well, this is stupid. I don't want to listen to it. So it's like a very, very fine line of like, okay, what is like that true center of, I'm just putting it out there versus, okay, maybe I'm spinning it because I believe in it, where I don't spin something else that I might not believe in. Or it's just a very interesting dance with a lot of, the digital age. And unfortunately, so many people are like, I am so narrow-minded, but it's like, educate yourself across the board. Like, it's like, you might not believe in Mormons, but if you did an episode with them, it's like, I want to listen just to know what it's like. Like, I want to learn more.
It's fun to learn exactly. Man. Yeah. So, have you guys ever gotten hate for your podcast and the things you said? Have you ever had any hurtful comments or anything come your way? Or
no,
I don't think
Lucky you.
To some extent, I don't know. Not like I want it, but like, I don't think we've ever been at that point. Like, I don't think we've ever had an
said
audience
anything like so bold and like, I'm gonna say it.
Well, it's like, that's part of it, but then also it's just like our audience size. Like, like for us, it was like we never really pushed it as hard as we probably could have. Like, obviously, like if this is what you're doing full time, you're in it 100%. Like for our podcast, it was just something we would record on Monday nights, put out for friends. Like, it was like, we never had this crazy following, but I mean, a lot of it.
Though.
Yeah.
You guys could.
Oh, exactly. But so much of it.
He says I believe it. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, you came from nothing and we're here, so you did something right. But I think a lot of it is just like, you can't please everybody, where it's that same thing where it's like some people are going to be super offended by something, but it's like, okay, but why? Like, what makes you upset? What? Just because then it's like, to some extent too, it's like you can learn something from it of like, okay, did I say something that pushed the line, or you just hate the bigger picture and you're mad at me because I was anyway involved in it? So it's like very interesting thing to deal with all that, where it's like, okay, what are you mad about? Are you mad about what I said personally? Are you mad that it happened in general? Do you just hate this topic across the board? Like, it's very, but we've never had anything, which has been good.
If that ever did happen, I would love to have those people on. Like, those are the people I would want.
They won't come on. I know the type, man. They're trolls. They won't come on. It's very odd, at least in my experience.
But I mean, props to you for even offering it. Like, I feel like that's a big thing to be like, okay, if you disagree with one topic and you're on the other side, come on the podcast. Like, I want to have both sides, because that's what we talked about, where it's like, then you're in the middle. You're not, hey, only do one thing. But it's like, to some people too, it's like, it's easy, I think, to be behind a screen and just complain or just like, spew your own hate or whatever. But I'm like, it takes a lot to be like, hey, I disagree with you. And it's like, all right, fine, let's have a conversation about it. And people are like, I don't want to. And I'm like, but if you did, I would respect you a lot more. Because I'm like, you could disagree with anything I say, fine, but back it up. give arguments, give your point, whatever.
I'm
and even
willing
if
to
I
change
disagree,
sides.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I understand you more.
Yeah.
Where it's like all of a sudden, if you're like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, but tell me why. Like I want to learn more about me, what I said, whatever, and I want to better educate myself. But so many people are just like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, that's stupid. Like.
Are you confrontational at all, or do you consider yourself to be an agreeable person, or do you find yourself having debates about things?
I think it really depends on the topic. Thing is, a lot of the topics in which we have, they're super passive. We're just talking about happenings, not like, again, picking a
But
side.
in your personal life, though,
I like debate here and there. I mean,
about what? I want to get.
I like politics. Political debates, fun. I enjoy that stuff. So, but again, that's typically not what we shoot for.
Yeah.
If we ever had to have that on Donkey Brain the podcast, I think it'd be funny. I think it'd be an interesting thing to just randomly throw in there. Like the next episode, someone's like, "This is not
it's like,
Donkey Brain the podcast." This is
like it's like a hard hitting. Like, whoa, this is way bigger than just three
didn't
idiots
expect
just
facts
drinking beer
today.
talking about stuff. Like, yeah. But no, I think that like it's interesting because I don't think I'm really that confrontational, but. That's the thing is I'm like, if you're going to disagree with something that I'm passionate about, like, just tell me why. I'm like, even if I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, whatever, let's have a conversation and understand where the other person is. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I might not agree with you, but I get where you're coming from. That makes sense. And then it's like, cool, we were adults about it, not just like, yeah, you're just mad because I have my own beliefs.
No,
like,
you're stupid. No, you're stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those things.
This kind of is a segue into what I want to ask you next. But first, I kind of want to say, like, I've had an odd experience with the phenomena of people not being okay with the fact that they disagree with you on a certain subject. We are brought to you by Outworn Solutions in Fairbury, Illinois. We've all been there. You're trying to repair something small or large, only to end up needing a small, little annoying part that is specific to the thing that you're repairing. But you don't know what the heck the name of the part is, and you can't find it online for a reasonable price. This is precisely where the incredible services of Outworn Solutions in Fairbury, Illinois come to save the day. Outworn Solutions is a 3D printing service which uses state-of-the-art 3D printing software and hardware to create any and all of the small to medium parts that you need to repair your hot rod, your golf cart, your coffee machine, your cuckoo clock, your refrigerator, literally almost anything. And they do it by printing detailed parts into existence using a variety of strong, sturdy, or flexible filaments such as nylon, carbon fiber, copper, and other thermoplastics. John Fairs is the owner and operator of Outworn Solutions, and he doesn't only make replacement parts, but also custom creations as well, such as custom vases, frames, product mock-ups, cups and mugs, and everything else within reason that your mind can come up with. He's a genius and very passionate about 3D printing. So don't search for ridiculously marked up replacement parts online or in stores. Instead, go to John Fairs at Outworn Solutions because he can create the part that you need, likely stronger, and for a much better price. For the solution to all of your Outworn parts, visit Outworn Solutions at 1005 West Oak Street in Fairbury, Illinois, aka the old bowling alley, or give them a call at 815-674-9313. That's Outworn Solutions, the solution to all of your Outworn parts. I mean, and this might sound weird. I wonder if it's because autism runs in my family. It's like a slight kind of autism. I wonder if I have this social ineptness of not knowing what's okay to say. But I won't name names of places, but I've had times where I casually mentioned in a one-on-one conversation my view on, I'll say what it is. It's abortion. And I was like, in more words I said, like, I don't like that. I don't know if I support that. Not that I don't know. I don't support that.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, this whole restaurant, like all the staff, there's literally like a wall of them
On top of it.
getting after me. And it's like disagree. More people disagree with me than agree with me on that. But it was just crazy, like the fact that you can't disagree about things and it be okay. Like you can still be friends. I'm sure we would disagree, all three of us, on a number of subjects. All four of us even. Got Connor Reis behind the thing running the controls.
Oh yeah.
But like, have you ever had like disagreements or anything on your show?
Not really like that on our show, but like to your point, I think when people hear, especially a controversial topic like that, people always see the negative light. So if you were to take a stance, it's not for something, it's always against this other thing, right? It's a me versus you sort of thing. So I think we just need to get out of that way of thinking. That way of thinking is toxic, and it happens all the time. And that's part of the reason why, like, maybe those people won't come on your podcast. It's a very controversial thing all the time. It always has to be this me versus you, us versus them sort of thing. I don't understand.
It has to become personal.
Yeah.
Well, I think some people can't even back it up half the time. Like the amount of times I'm like, hey, like,
Which leads to more defensiveness.
Yeah, where it's like, you know, just tell me why you believe that. And it's, well, you know, I can tell you I don't agree with you. I'm like, clearly that's here we are. Like, where it's just like, you know, I think some people are just like afraid of like being exploited, that they're wrong, they can't explain it, whatever it is. But then it's just like well, I just need to die on this hill, but I'm not going to give any reasoning why, where it's like, no, dude, I'm trying to have a conversation. Like, we're not, you know, going to go outside and fist fight. It's like, no, we're just, you know, I want to understand everything in the bigger picture, because then I'm like, I'm better educated and I understand things.
That's mature.
Yeah, it's like, if you understand one thing and you're just like, oh, well, everyone else is wrong. I'm like, but do you know why they're wrong, or you just think they're wrong and that's that? Where, like, I think it's an interesting dance with a lot of people where sometimes I don't even know if they can back it up. And I mean, some of it might be, you know, I was brought up in a certain way that my parents said this,
that
but I don't really
like,
know.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why I believe it per se. That's just, you know, it got drilled into my head that this is what it is. But I'm like, okay, that's fine if you're younger. But I'm like, if you're like 25 or 30, it's like, you're an adult. You can kind of think for yourself. You can adapt or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of people just like don't know how to back it up some of the time. And that's why they're afraid to come on, because it's like, if they're saying stuff to you, all of a sudden it's like they're on a podcast and it's like, oh man, I can't back it up. I'm going to look like an idiot.
Yep. Something that we have, I see all the time, is people try to have like objective arguments with a subjective manner. Like they throw in like emotions or anything like that. There's no hardcore facts or anything like that backing up their arguments.
Right.
So I think that's why conversations can't be had and it just turns into arguments, right? Because we just let emotions take the best of us, and I don't know. It's just a terrible thing.
Yes, I agree completely. You let your emotions come way too much into play, and all of a sudden you have a debate that you're now emotionally invested in, and that's when it becomes an argument, and it becomes heated and things like that.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I wanted to ask then, so that kind of leads me into, you're a comedy podcast. You guys like comedy. You're funny guys. I love your podcast.
Appreciate
I think it's
it.
hilarious. What do you think about political correctness in comedy? Do you think there's some things you can't joke about, because that trend, that resistance to it being okay to joke about anything and everything, about the LGBTQ community, about different ethnicities, things like that, it's, in my opinion, from what I can see, it's getting stronger. The push against the push against it being okay to joke about whatever is becoming stronger. I know Dave Chappelle just had a really controversial stand-up special thing on Netflix, but what do you guys think about that? Is it okay to joke about anything and everything, or are some things off limits?
Well, the thing is, Dave Chappelle's funny, right? He's funny because he does push those boundaries. Saturday Night Live is not funny anymore. Like, I don't think Saturday Night Live is funny anymore because they continue to push that PC culture, and they try to like play within the lines, be funny within these lines, and it's not funny. They're not funny. So I think that's like Trevor Noah. I don't find him to be especially funny. I think because he, again, plays within those lines. Jon Stewart, even though he has beliefs in which I don't believe in, he's funny because he dances around. Bill Maher, I don't agree with him, but he's funny. He says things that are funny, and he can make points that are correct because he doesn't abide by the political correctness. So I don't know. I think we try to play within those boundaries way too often, and it ends up becoming this like watered down crap, like for lack of a better term. So yeah.
No, I think a lot of it's just like, I think you have to, education's like the biggest thing overall, where I'm like, okay, I think some things are like, we could probably like stop making jokes. I'm like, this is, you know,
like what? Give me an example.
So I think like a lot of people like push the like racial envelope, where it's like they're gonna make jokes about all this stuff, and I'm like, you know, I think we're kind of past, like, there's, you know, a lot of issues where like people are like, yeah, I'm gonna like joke about like Nazi Germany, and I'm like, I was like, it's pretty bad. Like, I'm like, you look back and it's like, okay, this is, you know, you don't want to be on the wrong side of history, but to some extent too, it's kind of like, okay, if they're educated and they understand where they're coming from versus just like shooting off the hip. Because I'm like, I think to some extent it's like, yeah, you could poke fun at anything, but you have to understand a lot of it, where it's like, hey man, maybe I make jokes about LGBTQ, but you know, maybe I have my sister, you know, is kind of my brother because, you know, they're trans, but I understand where they're coming from. I support the community, whatever, where it's like, it's kind of like finding the fine line of like, okay, I'm educated and making jokes that are funny because I understand it versus like, I don't get it. And it's almost just like hate speech of like, I don't want to be progressive. Like, I feel like some comics are like, I'm just going to make fun of like Jewish people. And I'm like, but why? Like, what's the, like, it's almost like you have to have that background and understanding to be like, okay, I understand it. I'm going to make jokes versus just like, I'm just going to get up there and just like say random things. Cause like to some extent, I think the culture in general has changed a lot just with like, you know, if you look at comics in like the early 2000s, they could just let it fly. Where it's like now people are like, you know, hey, we're a little bit more educated on this. You just can't like make fun of black people and it's just like not funny anymore. Like it's one of those things like it could be funny, but it's like, you know, if we've evolved as a culture, it's like you got to have some backing or something like that where it's, you know, at least kind of done tastefully or there's a reason behind it, not just, yeah, I'm a white comic, you know, I hate my wife or like weird. Like I think comedy in general has switched a lot. I think to some extent it's switched a lot where it's like you have Saturday Night Live where it's like you're almost afraid to push the envelope. But then there's also like soul comics that are like, yeah, I just maybe take it too far. And it's like, but what? Like you're almost not progressive at that point. You're just like stubborn and stuck in your ways where it's like.
And as soon as that stops being funny, though, is when it'll stop. But if there's a crowd that appreciates it, good luck stopping it, which I think is just kind of the natural way that comedy will evolve and how certain things in comedy that are popular will stick around if people continue to laugh. Some things are distasteful, but I think it's important to acknowledge that to have a little danger in your jokes and the content that you say in your comedy can really be beneficial, and it makes a joke funnier. Like I know that in my own experience, if you say something that's a little edgy and you know it's going to offend people, it's going to make some people laugh harder because it's like, I can't believe he said that. Sometimes they go too far, and in my personal opinion, when I've really thought about this topic, because a lot of me says all comedy's fine, you know, you can joke about anything. I don't like freedom of speech. You can. I think it's important that you have the ability to, as long as it's not threatening to someone. Yeah. But Nazi Germany is something that I find distasteful. I'm like, that's, you know, I have a hard time laughing. And the other one is probably 9/11. 9/11. I'm like, you know, boy, that was terrible on so many levels. So many people died. Yeah. Some people, who knows? I might end up laughing. I'm being honest. I might end up laughing if someone has a well-timed and delivered joke about that. It's still rough, though. You know.
But like it's almost one of those things. Like it kind of depends on like what I was talking about, where it's like if a random comic makes it about like 9/11, I'm like, all right, it's just kind of shitty. Like it is a super tragic event. But then it's like if Pete Davidson makes it, it's like, okay, your dad was involved, like your dad passed away, where it's kind of like, you know, you almost can make that because it's so close to home, and it's like for you, it's like
but then you start playing a game. It's like, can I make jokes about Mexicans?
Oops. Yeah, exactly. So I think one of the things that we try to do too much is when we try to like nitpick our comedy, we end up again like killing all comedy, right? Yes, so like, well, I can only joke about this, or I can only joke about that. I think the approach would be a lot better if we can just make fun of everything. Like, if you can make fun and poke fun at just damn near anything, we all know, like, obviously if you make a joke about Nazi Germany, we know Nazi bad, Germany bad back then. We know that. This is all common sense. We can make those jokes without people thinking that we're supporting that sort of thing.
I think you're right.
So, like, I think that line can be drawn. We all have like, that filter. We all understand. Just because I joked about something doesn't mean, like, oh, this is what I am. And I think that's what gets lost in it. So if one little passing glance, one little passing joke just gets said, it's like, oh, he believes that. That's what it is. We'll take that for what he said. Like, I think that's right. That in stone. That's a ridiculous thing.
Like to some extent too, it's almost like to what extent you're going. Where it's like, hey, if you have like one or two well-timed jokes, cool. But it's like if you're using like, you know, racism and like LGBT and like all that's like the base of your show. It's like you're almost using that as a crutch just to be like. It's almost like the low-hanging fruit of like things to make fun of, where it's like, you know, if you have 3-4 good jokes, you tell some funny stories, I'm like, those are the best comics because it's like they're actually funny. It's not like they're just being like, hey, I'm taking things that shouldn't be funny and I'm just saying them and just hoping that you're going to laugh and then I get a bunch of money kind of a thing. Like, so it's a very interesting combination, at least for me, because I'm like, some of the comics that like push the bar too much, I'm like, but like, are you actually funny? And like, I think a lot of it just kind of comes to like almost like their life off stage, where it's like, you know, I think like if you take like Dave Chappelle, I'm like, he's funny on stage, he's funny if he does any interviews, like he's an all around funny guy, where I'm like, if, you know, all of a sudden it's like, this comic's really funny on stage, but then in every other setting it's like they're not funny. I'm like, okay, but they're not funny. Like they're using their jokes to make themselves funny, but they're not, like they're almost relying on that too much. So it's very interesting to see who does what and all the big picture of it. But yeah, I think it's
like one example of that, like would be Norm Macdonald.
I love
just
Norm.
recently passed. He made fun of everything, right? Mm-hmm. What's going on,
Dude, yeah, freaking dog.
I
I apologize.
You're good.
That's never happened before.
It threw me off because with the mics and the headphones, I couldn't tell where it was coming from.
I can't hear. If I were to take this off, I don't know if I would hear it, but I
No.
can barely hear it when you were talking. Like, is that Jimmy like barking? He's talking and like a low key like bark it in the background. But no, but back to what I was saying.
We are brought to you by Marshallone's Pizza in Fairbury, Illinois. Look, I'm a pizza enthusiast, a pizza savant. I know my pizza. Every time I'm in Fairbury, Illinois, or within 15 miles of Fairbury, I am ordering Marshallone's Pizza because Marshallone's Pizza is amazing. Not only that, they also offer a daily happy hour. So if you call between 4 and 5 p.m. and order a pizza, you get the second one of equal or lesser value for free. Restrictions apply. You can even call at 4:45 p.m. and order your pizzas, pick them up at 8 p.m. and you will still get that happy hour discount. How amazing is that? For the most delicious pizza around, head nowhere else but Marshallone's Pizza in Fairbury, Illinois. Call them up and place your order today at 815-692-4602 and pick it up at 405 East Locust Street in Fairbury, Illinois. Marshallone's Pizza. That's good pizza. We are brought to you by Aftershock Decals and Design in Fairbury, Illinois. From business logos to building signs, Aftershock Decals and Designs in Fairbury creates graphics and prints that will make heads turn. If you need signage for any occasion, Aftershock's team of creative experts are virtually unlimited in their capabilities. They can create the highest quality full and partial vehicle wraps for cars, trucks, trailers, semis, and race cars, as well as small to massive banners for all occasions. They also do yard signs, decals, window perforations, stickers, custom logo designs, and much more. When you need to promote your business, develop your brand, or enhance your image, do it all with the area's most trusted graphic design company, Aftershock Decals and Design in Fairbury, Illinois. Give them a call at 833-332-2548 or pay them a visit at 116 East Locust Street in Fairbury.
Norm Macdonald is accredited as being one of the most intelligent comedians of all time. Understands so much, not racist, doesn't have anything like that, but yet he would push the limit on just about damn near anything. Like, I can just think about
The
stuff
O.J.
from,
Simpson jokes.
Yes, on Weekend Update. Those were so awful thing that happened. Let me just say that at front, just in case we got any like PC guys. Yeah, if you have any PC people listening, O.J. Simpson, that whole entire thing, his wife. Who was the guy that got killed?
I don't know. We weren't born yet.
Yeah, we weren't even alive.
And the other guy that got killed. That's a bad thing. But the jokes in which Norm Macdonald would say were so well timed, and that's like one of the only times I feel like that repeated comedy would hit every single time. And he eventually got kicked off of SNL because of that. Because but yeah, Norm Macdonald makes fun of everything. Super intelligent guy. We all know he's not racist. We all know he's not for these certain things. But we all can genuinely say, like, yeah, Norm Macdonald, extremely, extremely funny because he does make fun of everything. I think that's what we need to get back to.
I like that. I like that. And I also acknowledge what you're saying. It's like political correctness means well, but I think anything can go too far. Political correctness is supposed to be inclusive when it comes to speech, you know, for the sake of not offending people. I think it's well-mannered. It's well-intentioned, I should say. But when it comes to the sector of comedy, it can be a little... Maybe it doesn't have quite as much of a place there as it does in society in general. But
I think we misuse like the PC culture. Like you just said, it wants to become like... We want it to be an inclusive tool, but what we effectively do is it becomes like an exclusive tool, right? Like you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think we use it almost as a crutch too much. Like, oh, you know what? Let's lay off that. And again, like I said earlier, just waters down everything. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, we're getting towards the end of this thing. Before we go on to this one section that I'm pretty excited for, I want to ask, do you think, there's a lot of people that think about starting a podcast. What would you say to those people? Simple question there.
I
pray to God that they don't hear that clawing in the background.
They do. They have to be hearing that.
All right.
That's funny, though. I like it.
We've acknowledged it. People know what's going on.
There's a dog. He has separation anxiety.
It's not Jimmy. It's not Jimmy underneath the table or anything. I think the one thing that I would say, and I don't think we've ever had an issue with this, is probably just being your genuine self on your podcast. Like, you are your genuine self, and I think that's why people listen to you, right? I think oftentimes, though, people try to, like, do too many things or be something they're not. When they get behind this, like, it's a little intimidating thing to be talking to somebody else with a mic in front of you.
This helps with that. I'm dead serious.
100%.
This is very interesting.
Yeah. But being your genuine self, I think, generates the best dialogue and just the best back and forth and the best generation of ideas. So, again, just being genuine, being yourself, and people will listen to that.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. I think the biggest thing for us, at least like early on, was just like you said, like, be yourself, but also like be consistent. Like, if you want to, like I said, like, we never really pushed it as hard as we probably could have, just with like your audience size and everything like that. But like, a lot of it was, if you're saying, hey, once a week you're going to get an episode, if you do that for 4 weeks, you're going to get a lot less far than if you're like, hey, we did it for a year or whatever. And like that's the thing. Like, I mean, we've been talking about, we haven't probably recorded in like August just because it's like, life gets in the way. It's hard to find the time and stuff like that. But it's like, if you're serious about it, like, you have to dedicate the time. Like, I mean, we got like 60 something episodes in. Like, there were a few weeks off, or like, it was kind of weird where it was like Labor Day, where it was like we were both out of town, and then you get back and you're just too tired, you don't want to do stuff, whatever. Yeah, but like, a lot of it is just like that consistency is key, where it's like, if you have an audience now, if you stopped recording for 2 months, it's like, okay, well, that audience is going to go somewhere else. Like, where it's kind of like, you really, and that's like, doesn't matter if you're doing it for fun, doing it for, revenue, whatever it is. It's like, dude, if you're not consistent, like, that's not going to get you anywhere near as far, where it's like, dude, like, for us, I think it was, we usually record an episode that's less than an hour, and I can edit them together in like 20 minutes. So it's like, our time commitment is like bare none. But I'm like, people notice. Like, I've had people since we've stopped, like, texted me like, are you done with the podcast? Are you going to record again? Like, people notice that, where it's kind of like, if all of a sudden they're listening to you in a routine, or, they listen to you, hey, I know that they record Mondays, Tuesdays on the way to work. I know that there's not, but like, even the podcast I listen to, I'm like, hey, I know that this episode's going out on a Thursday. I'm going to listen to it. Where all of a sudden it's like, if you're not delivering that for people, they're going to find another way to fill that. They're not just going to sit and be like, oh, well, maybe they'll come out with one this week. So like, consistency is like huge with anything you want to do, whether it's like you were trying to grow it, you're just trying to, get into your own habit. It's like, because a lot of it for us was like, we knew, hey, Monday nights we're recording, 7, 8 p.m., be flexible, be whatever. But we knew, all right, on our calendars, we're recording on Monday. Like, and you kind of get into your own schedule, and then it works. Whereas if, 1 week you're recording, the next week you don't, the other week, record 3-4 days later, your audience is, it's inconsistent. Like, you're not going to hold anybody's attention at that point, because they might listen to an episode or two, but as soon as they go to find another one and it's not there, they might never come back, because they're like, yeah, I need somebody who's being consistent about it.
Okay, so be yourself and be consistent.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to do it, just go for it. Like, for us, we were just like, yeah, let's see how many we can realistically do. And I mean, a lot of it was, we started before COVID and we were recording in person, and then after COVID happened and we were both at home, we're like, all right, well, what is this going to do? Like, we can't just meet up anymore and record in person. Then we were like, all right, well, we can record over Zoom, and we can just record. And like, obviously it's less than ideal, but it's like, hey, we adapted, we figured it out, and we kept it going. Not just, well, we got like 4 episodes and then COVID happened and we're done. Like, we don't need to do it anymore.
I think Jimmy made a really good point at the beginning of the podcast. It's a lot easier than you would think. And That's coming from me.
No, it's
Jimmy.
true. Even
Jimmy pulls all the legwork. Jimmy does all the work. He does the editing and all that stuff. So Jimmy is the one that deserves all the credit for the show. With that being said, he makes it look extremely easy. And I would think it's an easier process in which to do. If you want to be dedicated to doing it, it's an easier process than you originally would think. And he said that again earlier. So not being scared in which to take that leap of faith and
that might be
yourself.
the most difficult part is having the nerve and the guts to put it out there, talking on camera and talking in the audio format and just putting it out there for everyone to hear.
But a lot of it too is like what we talked about at the beginning, like if you ask yourself like, hey, if I did it, if someone else did it in the same format, would I listen to it? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, well, don't do it like that. Like if it's not even interesting to you, you can't expect your friends, your family, whoever it might be to listen to it, where it's like, find that format, figure it out, get into a schedule, and then from there, you're good. Like, it really isn't that hard. I mean, you obviously have a much better setup here, and it's, running through.
Yeah, I mean, look at this place. He's like the blow-no Joe Rogan. He's
exactly.
He's
got the shirt and everything.
He's blow-nogan. He's blow-nogan, like Joe Rogan, but blow-nogan. Yeah. That's him.
I hope that sticks.
I like that.
And he has the backdrop and everything. When I first walked in here, I'm thinking like, am I at like Joe Rogan's ranch down in Texas right now? Is this what this is?
You are the man.
This is otherworldly impressive. But what you've done, like where you've taken it to where it is now, it's crazy. It's
you guys are the inspiration for it, and I'm dead serious.
Good.
I was on your show, and I was just like, man, this is really cool.
Yeah. But like, I think you realize, because like I remember we had a conversation like pretty early on when you were thinking about it, of just like, hey, where do you post to? What do you do? Like,
yes, thank you for giving me the information.
But like
too.
a lot of it for us, like, I mean, I don't know if anybody like uses Anchor, knows what that is, like if you're not in podcasting, but for us, it was like, Anchor is pretty much a service where we upload our podcast, we keep like our logo, we just rename each titles, but pretty much you take your MP3 file, put it in there, and after 2 or 3 episodes, we're on like 8 different streaming services. I don't even know what they are beyond like,
Spotify,
Apple Music.
There's like Narbox, there's all these weird things I haven't even heard of, but Anchor did all that work. Like for us, we just post it and that's it. Like where people I think are like, well, am I going to have to manually upload? And like, they just like think it's a lot harder, but I'm like, Anchor's free. Like we spend no money for it. Like where it's kind of like, if you're not, it's not like you're spending $100 a month that you're never going to make back. It's like, no, it's a free service. Like I get an email from them like once a week, just about random stuff. So I'm like, if that's your issue, that's a bigger problem. But Anchor's free, easy to use. It's super simple. Like, where I'm like, it's easy too, because like for us when we started, we used to just sit and have a like little H1N Zoom,
so funny,
just like the little handheld recorder we would just like put between us. We would just have like,
so was there like echo and stuff like that?
Yeah, dude,
it was awful.
It was awful, horrible.
Good thing we were groundbreaking on COVID and everything.
Yeah,
it would have been
no, it was like one of those things though. It was like so simple because like for us, like some people like. Realistically, if anybody threw any objection out in the world, we're like, okay, well, I don't have a recorder. I'm like, do you have a computer? You can record directly to your computer. Like, you can put a phone down and record a voice memo. I'm like, it might not sound as good, but all of a sudden, you're 10 episodes in, you're like, all right, I'm liking this. I got a feel. Maybe I buy a microphone. Or like, you can build off of that. But I'm like, what you need to start? I'm like, if you have a cell phone, that's all you need. Like, you can record everything. You can do stuff like that. And for us, like, I mean, you might edit a little bit more just because you have like the Instagram and everything like that. But literally, it's like we start and we'll talk for like a minute or two, and I like cut that off and then put the intro. And then in the outro, I cut that and put the outro. And that's all I do. I don't cut anything in between. Like we kind of just like what we're doing here. It's like, we're recording and that's it. You take the one file. You're not mixing. You're not doing anything crazy. It's very, very simple. But so many people are like, well, I'm not an audio engineer. I'm like, you don't need to be. Like, it's way simpler. And as soon as you do like 15 minutes of research, you're like, yep, all right, I could do this. Like, this isn't that hard. Like, but even for you, like, what is your time commitment? Because like, obviously we're recording here. I mean, I know you post like little small social media snippets. So that's kind of tricky because you actually have to go through and find those. Like,
I'll tell you, it's the biggest thing that I've learned. The learning curve has been, I don't even know what to say. I've learned a ton, and the whole battle is trying to make the whole process simpler. The process of sharing clips, the process of recording and publishing, everything like that. All I do at this point, at the beginning, I would spend like 10 hours on each episode editing each clip because I do video also. I would go on iMovie, put the Audacity file, edit that, try to edit out any noise that I could because I would record on microphones, put that file down there, sync up the videos with it, with the audio, and then put another layer of video of the other person, one shot of me, one camera's on me, one camera's on them. I won't even go into it, but it's just a whole bunch of cutting, clipping, making sure everything's synced up, putting in advertisements. It was nuts, man. But then what I have now is I have Connor Reis behind the TV. He's hitting some buttons, which is switching the camera for me, so I don't have to do that in post-production. Yeah. But really,
some live cutting, dude. Yeah. This is legit. This is a big production. Yeah.
He's behind the curtain over here.
Yeah. That cost a decent amount of money, so I wouldn't recommend doing that at the beginning. But all you need to do if you just want audio is get Audacity, plug who knows what in. You can get splitters, like a little thing you plug into the headphone jack, splits into 2 headphones. You talk into 2 Apple headphones, and all of a sudden you have a mic right here, and it actually sounds decent. Yeah. You just talk to someone over Zoom or in person, and upload that file to Audacity, turn up the bass, reduce the noise, and it sounds really nice. Yeah. It's very, very simple. Upload that, save it as an MP3, upload it to Buzzsprout or on Anchor. Yeah. And boom, it's on Spotify. Like it's very simple.
It's crazy because like I think like what I would say too is like it's as simple or as complex as you want to make it, like financially and just like time wise. Like it's one of the, like for us it was like there was never a point, even like I was making like graphics and stuff, that I was ever spending more than like 3 hours a week on it. Because like to some extent, like once you get the system down, like even for some of the graphics I would make, it was like I had a Photoshop PSD built out that all I needed to go through was like just change in some of the answers. Like if we ever did a top 5, I would just change and then edit whoever our guest name was. They look the same every week, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's professional. That's uniform." I'm like, "No, it's just laziness. That's all it is." Like, but like a lot of it, it's like you don't need a ton of equipment because as soon as because that's the other thing too is I would say, don't overcomplicate it because then you ruin it for yourself. Like for us, it was like,
right. That's a good
if
point.
we started with a setup like this, it's like, dude, there's so many moving parts. If we're not getting good stuff, if we forget to hit record, all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm in like thousands of dollars. It's not fun, and I'm not getting good quality. Where it's like, if you learn from an Apple phone, all of a sudden you use this, and you're like, oh, this is that much easier. And then it's like things get easier as you go.
If you look under this table, there's so many wires. The name of the game is making simple the complex. If you can do that, which I've thankfully done because I started from scratch, I mean, then it becomes easy. Like you look on the table, there's a bunch of wires and stuff. But as much as I want to say like this is easy and it's not much work, at this point it's a lot of work. Down the road, it can definitely be not much work. Yeah. But yeah, and before we move on, before we wrap it up, I guess, I asked Connor, do you have a few current event topics that you were going to ask us about?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely bring up one point.
This is sick.
He's just going to... I love this. You guys inspired this. I've never done this before. He's just going to say one topic and we'll give our quick opinions on.
Awesome.
We'll see. I have no idea what they are. They might be absolutely ridiculous, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess just by listening to the interview, I guess I'm curious to say, we talked about a little bit of political correctness, and I'm just wondering, with you guys possibly still continuing your podcast, how do you think over the years, like within the next 5 years, how political correctness is going to take effect in society and in your ways, comedy? Is that going to affect you negatively, or do you think it's going to be people are more than likely, I don't know, I guess, grow thicker skin?
What I think kind of resonates with people now, because PC culture is so prevalent all over the place, people love that relief. So I think it honestly bodes well for us. Okay, just look at Barstool Sports. That is the least PC company ever, and it's exploding as a media company. So people love that. I would think for us, if we're still like just farting around doing our podcast and being relaxed about it, I think that resonates with people exponentially. And I think that honestly trends well for us if PC culture continues the way it's going to be. People having just a 45-minute release just to listen to us, again, just goof around, I think that bodes well for us.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think a lot of it too is like in our podcast, I don't think it'll affect us at all because we don't push a norm. Yeah. Like we're very much just like, we're just going to be ourselves. We're going to say what we want to say. Like we're not pushing other agendas. We're not pushing our own idea. Like we're just talking realistically is what it boils down to. I mean, I think a lot of that too is like, we figured out like, so a lot of the people who listen with, you know, a few people who are outliers or things like that, like are around our age. So it's almost like we're talking with like-minded people. So it's kind of like, okay, well, how do we think, okay, if that lines up with everybody else, I don't think we'll have any issues. So it's like, we don't really have to adjust ourselves, adjust our topics, anything like that. It's kind of like, well, yeah, if we think a certain way, there's a good chance that everybody who listens is pretty close to it. So that helps a lot, just to be like, okay, we know our audience, we have a good idea of who's, you know, kind of thinking on the same levels and things like that. But yeah,
a very base level. Not too many high level thinkers.
Yeah, if your IQ's like 75, like donkey brains for you. But I don't really see it being, you know, I think a lot of it too is like, it's a problem if you make it a problem. Like all of a sudden, if you're changing your podcast so much, if you're doing all this stuff, it's like, you know, if you're not getting a bunch of pushback, you don't need to restructure everything. It's like, you can't please everybody. So you just have to figure out, okay, well, you know, how can we not deliberately offend people? But, you know, if you lose a few people along the way, but everybody else is still vibing with it, it's like, all right, well, we don't need to restructure everything, kind of a thing.
And I think in society, there's kind of a yin and yang in all things in nature, really. So if people become extremely politically correct, there's going to be a group of people that are also go the other direction in equal amounts, you know? So it's like, if political correctness becomes more loud in society, there's going to be a need and a thirst or a hunger or whatever for less politically correct content. And so even if there's less comedy shows like your guys's, or more whatever you want to say, less politically correct things, they're going to get more viewers. I just think it's always going to be like this. If this goes up, then this goes up, I guess, technically.
It's an ebbs and flow sort of thing. And it's kind of gone through time. Like the 90s was really PC. Then it kind of laxed a little bit. Then it came back once President Obama got elected and everything. PC culture ramped back up. And then Trump gets elected, kind of dips back down again. Now we're coming all the way back up again. It's an ebbs and flows thing.
You could go even interesting. Yeah. I didn't really think about that, but like, I mean, a lot of people, it's like, ebb and flow, like if you look at like stuff from the 90s, it's like, oh yeah, they just went for it. But then it did kind of tame out a little bit, and then now it's like, I don't think we'll ever go fully back to where it was, but I think there definitely is, you know, just people's like, you know, hey, I laughed at that joke versus like, ooh, I need to get up and leave. Like just, you know, that hard line for people, just because I think a lot of it can sway a little bit of, like we talked about. It's like, yeah, that definitely crossed the line, but, you know, it was kind of funny or stuff like that. It definitely, you look at it a lot more and just like, oh, this is a little too much for me. And you find that happy medium kind of a thing.
Yes, and in psychology, they talk about, or I've read a lot about this need for a homeostasis in society, in one's mind, where you have kind of one foot in this progressive zone where you are daring to try to make society something new. You're daring to get it to become this ultra accepting, what's the word for a utopia type of thing. And then you have one foot in, you know, this has always worked, this is safer, this is structured, that's conservative. Progress, conserve. You kind of have to have that balance in order to have a great quality of life in your own mind and in society. So I think for as long as we are a healthy country, we're going to have like equal amounts of liberal, progressive, and conservative whatever. But I don't think it's really going to go anywhere. It's just going to kind of do this.
That's a good point.
All right, Connor, one more.
All right.
Good question.
So, sounds like you guys have been finding success pretty well with your guys' podcast. What are your aspirations, or what are your future goals for your guys' podcast?
Let's hear it.
That's a good question. This is a really boring answer, though. I don't really have this grand plan. I mean, I don't know. Do you have like a grand plan for it? I don't. I mean, it's something we do recreationally, just again farting around, just joking with people. It's a release for us. It's fun just to sit there and shoot the crap and kind of just talk to friends that we haven't talked to in a while. Again, I haven't seen Jimmy
probably like over a year.
We were walking in the door.
You guys haven't hung out in like a year?
We were walking in the door. Like Jimmy literally goes, "When's the last time I've seen you?" I go, "We had an event like last summer." I'm like, pretty sure that was the last time. That was a year and like 3 months ago. So
like that's why it was cool hilarious. Too with like our podcast, like because a lot of it was like we kept in touch as friends, but then it was also kind of cool because when we were recording in person, it was like, okay, well, who is on campus? And then it turned into like, okay, well, if we're doing it over Zoom, we can get literally anybody. It's like we had a buddy.
Connor. It's Amazon guy. That's never happened. We've had two firsts. The dog and
crazy.
Yeah.
Nice.
He gone.
There's a phantom knock.
Yeah. Well, that's the same thing. It knocked, and I was like, I know that's where the door is, but I can't tell because everything is like. But yeah, like our big thing was like
so unprofessional.
Yeah, it was
this Paul Garcia guy. He needs to get his stuff together.
Just
Dude,
donkey brain bringing our shit.
This would never happen on Donkey Brain. No one's knocking on the door for us.
Donkey Brain, the recorder would have died like 30 minutes ago, so it just never would have been documented.
Yep.
But yeah, for us, like it was cool because like we had. Like I had a friend who was living out in New York and we had him on, and then like even like Evan Patterson, like it was just, like the amount of people we could then get on because it was like, hey man, if you have stable internet, like that's the only thing we ask. Like, so it was cool just to grow and do that. And I think to some extent too, like obviously we're not in college anymore, so like the distance thing is like we'll probably have to stay on Zoom to some extent, but you know, we can definitely run with that and get way more people involved because it's not, hey, we have to, you know, you have to call in and then we have to run that through a board, or like there's so many more moving parts where it's like, yeah, we could just do it over Zoom. And I mean, it's funny because like with doing it over Zoom, it's like the amount of like your friends and vice versa that I've met over Zoom have been on the podcast and have never met in person. But I'm always like, oh yeah, so-and-so, so cool, man. Like all this stuff where it's like just weird, but you know, it's cool to see who we can get on. And like, even like, you know, a few people just like organically, like just like shot me a text like, hey man, what do I got to do to be on your podcast? I'm like,
show up.
Yeah. I'm like, you'd surprise you. There's absolutely nothing. Like have beer. That's pretty much it. But yeah, so I mean, that would be a cool thing, especially when we kind of get back rolling and just see who else we can get. So I guess that's an aspiration to be like, you know, who wants to be on, who could we get, just, you know, get back in the groove, just because, I mean, like we talked about, that consistency. It's like you gotta get back into it. You gotta get into the routine, or else you're just never gonna, you know, give your audience a consistent podcast. Like,
yeah. And it's funny. Now I'll tell you what my, I guess, idea is for the future of the Paul Garcia Show. And it's hilarious how different it is from your guys's. I feel like a schmuck kind of taking it so seriously, but
I mean, we also, like, if you're doing this for a living, I feel like it's a lot different.
Very different.
We're just two guys who are like, yeah, let's keep in touch after college and just talk about stupid shit. Where like for you, it's definitely like you almost have to look at it in that business sense of like, hey, I need to take it seriously, because if I slack off or I don't post, like, okay, it's like directly correlates to like, do I have a studio to record in, or am I homeless? Like, you know, that kind of a thing.
So yeah, and I'm kind of I'm talking to you guys, but I'm also talking to the people that are going to listen to this who wonder, it's like, you know, what do you want to do with this, Paul? So the reason I started it was because I was trying to figure out, what do I like to do? What am I good at? I'm okay at talking to people, and I like working with audiovisual stuff, and I really enjoy having conversations, especially about meaningful things, inspiring things, educational things, stuff like that. And then also, my thing was, how can I serve God? How can I serve people around me, the world around me? How can I make their lives better and be pleasing to God? So that's why I did the podcast. The goal for it to grow is just grow my reach, the audience, really grow that. And then down the road, hire some people that'll go do some media, capture video, go do the on the street interviews in addition to me. So I'll do this show every weekend. They'll go out, talk to people around the area. There'll be maybe multiple people having multiple shows, something a lot like the Daily Wire does, you know, with Ben Shapiro, Andrew Klavan. Yep. But a lot of honest, unbiased, no narrative journalism. So maybe someone's writing a blog, just going out getting people's honest opinions, not trying to trap them. Just a really refreshing, new, maybe even a little humorous, but maybe not. Just getting people's honest opinions, getting people on who talk about a wide variety of things from a variety of different standpoints, just to promote this civil, honest, educational, intelligent dialogue, because I think we need a lot of that in society. We're becoming more divided, and if I can bring on people and have conversations between people who are of different mindsets, and that it's civil and it's good and it's educational, I think that can do a lot for not society at large. I'm not that egotistical or anything, but the world around us at least is a place to start. So that's the goal for me, is to, you know, a slightly multimedia company with a few employees that just promotes honest education, getting people's stories out there to inspire others and to educate others and gauge the public's opinions on certain things for maybe political issues and who knows what else. But Yeah,
Well, if that's the
that's
goal,
my
man.
answer.
You're already kicking ass. I mean, you already jumped off the start, man.
Well, thank you
doing
very
awesome.
much.
No,
Means
that
a
is
lot.
cool, and I think there's a lot to that where it's like if we're like, because I think like a lot of news publications, it's cool, but it's like, okay, if there's 2,000 people working there, it's like, you know, if you can have 10 people, but it's like, hey, we have 10 people who kick ass, we
Exactly.
are really, working as a tight knit group.
Quality
it's like,
over quantity all day.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we don't need to be posting hundreds of articles a day, but it's like, yeah, if we can post 3 a day, that everybody's like, holy cow, this is awesome. Like, you're gonna get a lot farther with that, which is cool.
And I also want to say that. Oh, go ahead.
As long as you have Connor behind there, I mean, that's your quality right there. What else would you need?
Dude, yeah, Connor, you're killing it, man. You're doing fantastic with the questions, getting involved.
Nailed
I need a
it.
4th microphone, though.
There we go.
Oh yeah, I would have loved that. But with that being said, too, guys, I just have like one more question too for you guys.
Okay.
So I know a lot of your fans are probably watching this, like, oh yeah. But so
love
if
that. That's the
you
best part so
have
far.
these new upcoming fans that are going to check your guys' podcasts out, and you probably have some old previous recorded episodes, what would you say were your 2 best or your guys' 2 favorite interviews that you've done?
I love that
Anything
question.
with like
That's
goofy
like my
goovers or
favorite
just
one.
like
That's my
That's pretty
favorite
good.
one. Like we get that. We honestly get asked that all the time. Like, which one did you like the most?
I know, and I don't have a good answer.
I honestly think my favorite one. We had top conspiracies.
Ooh, that's
That
deep.
one
Yeah.
was awesome. That was so
I
good.
guess like a little bit more about the show. So we kind of broke it up into like 3 things. So we have our weekly episode, and then for a little bit we were doing top 5s, which was like, I think you were on for a top 5 where we just drafted stuff. We did inventions where it was just like going through, and then we also had like a story time, which is just people telling ridiculous stories. But yeah, the conspiracy one was really interesting because it's like, you don't have to be like a tin hat kind of person to listen to it. That was a good one, actually.
That's probably my favorite. If either that or I don't know. I'm having a hard time now.
We did a 2020 recap
That was good too.
in like August, which is like almost like a one of a kind episode. Like we just did it just for us, just where we went through periodically everything that had happened in that year up until the point we got where it was like, okay, like January, like World War III threats. Then it was like there's murder hornets, like COVID. Like we went through
Kobe
like,
dying. Like,
yeah, like Kobe died. It was like we were doing all the George Floyd stuff. Like pretty interesting listen because it was just like us just off the cuff, just like we're just going to talk freely about it. Like no structure, no nothing. But yeah, that was a cool episode just because I think it changed it up. Like that was like probably one of our more serious, like, we actually have an interesting following. Let's just change it up a little bit. But that's cool to look back on just because I think we did a good job and like talked a lot about things that have since changed or have like, are starting to change. Like we were pretty progressive at the time, which was cool.
So, kind of on the flip side of that coin, I just had a flashback. Remember the one episode we didn't want to air that had Evan Patterson on it one time?
Yeah, we haven't aired it.
Yeah, that's
What?
okay. We lied because we said we didn't do that. We've never done that before. We've done that one time. We listened back on it. It was so bad. Well, he listened back on it.
I think we recorded. I didn't listen back on it. You sent it to me and I deleted it. So, yeah,
What?
It was.
Why was it so bad?
So I think
had
we had
too many
recorded a normal episode, and then we did a top 5.
And those both rocked. They
and-
were really fun.
Yeah,
they
we were
super
like,
funny.
dude, we gotta do let's do a 3rd episode. We were like, we're on a roll, which we never did, and we just like recorded, and it just had like no structure. It was
terrible.
just like we all finished, and we were like,
That was awful.
what was that? Like it was
terrible.
not good at all. Like it was one of those things, but like to some extent too, like you have to kind of have a filter, like you said, like the quality over quantity. Like, if you're gonna post one week and you're like, okay, this episode doesn't hold up to my standard, you don't have to post it. Like for us, we were like, I don't even know what to call this. Like this was just
to
us
give
just
a little bit
going
of context
for it.
too. This is kind of useless now at the end of the episode. Now that we mentioned his name like 3 times, Evan Patterson. You wrestled with him. at
He's the
Noah
man.
Academy. Yeah,
Love Evan.
Patterson. And I went to high school with him. So okay, there's our context. We've said his name like 5
Yeah.
times. And he was like, "Who the hell is this Evan Patterson guy?"
Yeah.
Does everyone know who Evan is?
Good mutual friend, but yeah, it was just like hilarious because we were like, what is this? Like,
was
I was like, I
It
don't
was
even want to
awful.
edit that. Like this is rough, but yeah, but I don't know. I think, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, each episode, I would say, I don't know if I have a favorite per se, but I think a lot of them they all do different things. And like what's interesting about our shows it's almost like time sensitive. Like when you look back, like if you were to like look something up, it's like, okay, Tom Brady, like that was right around the Super Bowl, where it's like you listen back and it's like weird because it's not really relevant anymore. But when you listen, you're like, oh, I could almost remember everything you talked about related to that specific week, where it's like, each episode's different. Some people come in and they're like, I've done 3 hours worth of research, and others are like,
not even knowing the topics. We're like, all right, because we always start out with the guest talking first because we're super polite. So we go like, all right, blank, what are people talking about? And they'll sit there with the biggest, because we see them on Zoom, and they'll be like, well,
they're like, I didn't have that one. I had the other one.
Yeah,
I'm like, cool, no. Bringing 50% to the table. Like,
rock and start.
Like,
all right, Jimmy, you take it from here.
Yeah.
Awful.
No, but I mean, it was cool. I mean, for us too, like looking back, like it's almost like, and I'm sure like you'll get to that point too, where it's like you look back and you're like, okay, I've actually like done something. Like it's not like, hey, I did 3 episodes and that was it. Like for us, like we're at like 60 something, where it's like kind of crazy to be like, we went from in person, then through COVID, and then like all this stuff, and it's like, all right, like we had a good amount of people, like, and it's fun too, because like I'm sure people do this for you as well. Like we'll post something on like Tuesday, and then like Wednesday afternoon, like I'll get a text from somebody being like, yeah, dude, I was sitting outside my lecture hall like before class, like laughing to the point of tears. Like people thought there was something wrong with me. Like that last episode was so funny, or like, loved your take on that, or like, it's just cool though to see like, okay, this isn't just like I record it, I put it on the internet.
It's not a waste of time.
Think of it again. Exactly, like, which is cool.
Very rewarding.
That's the best, man.
Yeah.
Well, guys, Jimmy, Colton, it has been amazing to have you guys
thanks
here.
Thanks for having us.
It's
This is a legit
surreal.
setup, man. I've been liking it. It's cool to see it. I'm like, it's always interesting when you see it online. You're like, what does it really look like in there?
Yeah.
But you did a good job. I'm liking
Very
it.
tasteful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
All right, that is
Awesome.
a wrap.
Thank you.
Paul, Connor, thank you.